Welcome to Life After 40 Conversations with Philip Blackett. This is a space for honest, thoughtful conversations about midlife, without the hype, without diagnosis, and without pressure. If you're somewhere between 35 and 55 years old and quietly navigating questions about your energy, your identity, your work, your faith, your relationships, or your health, you're not alone. Midlife can often look stable on the outside and feel unsettled underneath. Life after 40 conversations exist to do one thing well: to give adults in midlife the language, the clarity, and the calm perspective for a season that can often feel confusing, lonely, or silently overwhelming. This show exists to help you feel seen, steady, and less alone as you navigate the second half of life. Now, it's not a self help program. It's not a medical show. It's not even a motivational pep rally. What this is a meaning making space. Each episode is a grounded conversation with myself and with leaders, caregivers, entrepreneurs, pastors, parents, professionals, and thoughtful human beings who are living through midlife in real time. We reflect on lived experiences without issuing prescriptions with peer pressure, because I believe in this deeply. Midlife is worth living and worth living well. And living it well doesn't start with pressure, it starts with perspective. So if you ever thought to yourself, why does this season feel different? Or why am I rethinking things that used to feel settled? You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I'm grateful that you're here. So let's begin today's conversation. Now, my guest here today is W.B. Dale. He's an entrepreneur, author, and deep thinker at the intersection of integrity, responsibility, and human connection. Dale brings a rare blend of financial acumen, creative expression, and purpose driven leadership. Whether he's building businesses with strong cultural moats, writing work that sparks meaningful reflection, or exploring the nuances of growth, both personal and professional, he challenges conventional thinking while staying grounded in values. So get ready for a conversation that's both thoughtful and practical, while also unafraid to go beneath the surface. WB, welcome to Life After 40 Conversations.
Thanks, Philip. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to you and all the listeners.
Absolutely. Excited to get started here. So, really, just to kick things off, the first question, I shared your introduction with the audience just now and love to get your own words here. Before the titles or the resume, who is WB in this season of life?
I love that you asked that question. I love that you asked that question because there's one thing, if nothing else, I wanted to leave this group with. And titles are meaningful and helpful at times. They help us slot people in where they fit in some ways. But I wanted to just make sure that we started out is we are more than our work. We are more than what we produce. We are people that have a purpose embedded in us. And so, who am I in this season of my life? And what I think is important is I'm a person that's here to help people flip their lives. Bottom line, I want to shift perspective so that people can live their best lives. It's been at the heart of my work always, but it is something I'm walking more in this season right now.
Absolutely. And so, for us, we talk about midlife for something that we all go through if you live long enough, right? And so, just curious, I look at midlife between 35 to 55 years old. And so, when you look at that period for yourself, when did you first realize something had shifted within you during that period?
I think, for me, a big marker is having kids, right? Because time kind of goes into a vacuum when you have kids and you start seeing them and you start looking at what type of legacy are you leaving? What are you building? Why were you building it? All those types of questions that come up. And then you have things happen. You have jobs that go away. You have people that go away. You may have a marriage that breaks down. And as all these things start to add up, you start to look and say, am I moving? Is the ground moving beneath me? What's going on? And so for me, it started to question like, what is this? What is this mark that I want to make within my dash? And what I call my dash is everybody's born on a certain day. Everyone's going to pass away on a certain day, but between that time is the dash. And that's where you have the opportunity to make an impact. And what's interesting to me, and I think about it every now and then, is we are going to be a story much longer than we are alive. And we are all stories, right? And I'm an author, so that fits into that concept. But a lot of people are only going to be around for a certain length of time, and more time will be spent you not being on Earth. If we look at thousands of years of recent recorded human history, and you think the average person 75 years of life, it's a lot of time that your story is going to go on more so than you being here. And so I try to be present in the moment and realize that over time that perspective has grown larger in terms of how I want to live my life and make an impact during it.
I think you said something really pivotal right there. Like, we're more than likely going to live as a story that outlasts our actual life, right? It's just, what is that going to be? And the first thing I thought about, WB, was like, when people ask, how was my grandfather? What was my grandmother like? And it's off of that experience people's stories are told, even after the grandparent has passed away. And so the thought becomes, what do you want your story to be about? Which is interesting because in some parallel, I've heard people use something similar to say, hey, what do you want your eulogy to be like? And the challenge I have with that now, after hearing what you just said, is a eulogy is told at one particular time at your funeral. You're not there because you're gone. And it's told in a moment where it lasts maybe 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. It may be written on a program. Everyone's really emotional at that time. So half of the people are probably not even processing or listening what you just said in the eulogy, anyways. But that's it. And you kind of like gear yourself up for that, as opposed to, what do you want your legacy to be told in terms of that story that's being told from one generation to the other? Is it a footnote, or is it something that goes beyond? Is it's its own book.
Mhm.
It's its own volume. It's its own documentary, you know? It's
Exactly.
powerful. And so, just kind of thinking about that, when you went through midlife yourself, was there anything you noticed that used to work for you that suddenly didn't anymore?
Yeah, I would say for sure trying to be somebody for other people that I wasn't comfortable with, self
Mhm.
sacrificing, doing things to be liked rather than doing what I liked. Those are things that I don't find utility in at this point in my life. I've started to learn to speak to my needs, speak to what I want, and hold people accountable to those expectations. So that's something that has been an ongoing growth area for me.
I like that. And it's always weird because, from conversations I've had before, that seems to be like a more recurring thing, because people are like, I don't want to wait till I'm like nursing home age to not care about what other people are thinking. Not just like not care, but
Mhm.
it's like caring to the point where now you're adjusting your daily life decisions based on someone else's approval, who may or may not even care what you do in the first place, or may not even remember it after they're gone. And so I really can resonate with that too. Where it's just like at some point you just gotta live your life because that's all you have, you know?
Mhm.
So what would you say surprised you the most about this season of midlife?
Well, what surprised me the most is how much more there is. Just a little shift here and there can have, and if anybody's ever read the book Atomic Habits, I'm sure you're very familiar with this concept of you don't have to do this big sweeping 180 change. You could do a small incremental change and have outsized impact. And when I look at, this period of life, there was a time where I was very tired all the time. I was gaining weight. I've always been relatively skinny, and and people who really know me would say, no, you haven't been you've been really skinny. We want to give you some food sometimes. Is how most people would say it. And all of a sudden, I started to get a little heavier for me, right? And I was tired and I was dragging and I was just feeling like, oh, this is what it is. This is, getting older. I can't function and all this stuff. And I went to a men's event and the people there, the leader of the men's event, he said, you have no excuse not to be in the best shape of your life. And he wasn't saying it to me, but he was saying it to me. And I was like, I was an athlete. I was a college football player, wrestler. I was the male athlete of the year in my high school senior year. And I was like, but I can't even run and not get tired. What's up with me? And I started to just make some small changes. One of the things I did was I changed my diet to where I didn't even exercise yet. I just changed my diet, went anti-inflammatory protocol, full on cold turkey, just like this doesn't belong in me. I'm done. And I just went on it. I've been on it for over 2 years. I lost over 30 pounds. It stayed off. My energy level spiked. Can do 100 push-ups in one set. It's just, and I could do that when I was younger, right? When I was a super athlete, I couldn't do something like that. And now here I am, 41 years old, and I can get together and do 100 push-ups in a set. I can do 300 a day or more. And it's just, you have so much more to offer than you think if you're willing to dial into what your body needs, from my opinion. And
I
being in Ghana really helped me understand that because I saw these people. I was like, that man's probably 60 years old and he's up at 4 a.m. and he's doing all this stuff. And I'm sitting here talking about some, oh, I'm so tired. I just walked a few blocks, like get it together. So that's what I would say.
I like that because, like we were talking before we came on here, and clearly we're big fans of football. We love sports. And I think one of the things you talked about was just like, football players, even at like the height level, like the top level professional, they are all about dialing in what they eat, training, stretching, doing all the things that they need to do to be at the top of their game each Sunday. And the question that comes up top of mind for me when I think about that is, I mean, are those techniques secret, like kept behind a closed door and, you know, signed to secrecy? Like you got to pay $1 million to get a hold of that? Or could you find out essentially what those things are? And every regular person that may not be playing in the NFL can adapt and adopt some of those things in your own life. So you're maybe not training for a Super Bowl, but you're training so that you can live to be 60 years old and work at 4 a.m. if you want to and not be tired, or make it to, your 80th birthday when no one in your family has ever gotten to that far.
I think so. And one thing I would say as a caveat, because I know this audience is leaning a little bit more experienced in life, is there are certain workouts that are appropriate for you based on your age. And there's content out there that can help kind of guide because some things, quite frankly, you shouldn't be doing. Like at 40 years old, you shouldn't be doing. Because as Kevin Hart once said generously in his PSA, respect the age. You got to respect the age because there are certain types of workouts and the approaches to those workouts that could leave you in physical therapy or in the hospital. So just use some logic there, look for the training that's available. And a lot of it isn't this high intensity stuff, right? Like you don't need to do that and be shredded like a 22-year-old who has all these different things going on in their body to support that need. But yeah, you should be in the best shape you can be. You should be working in the flow. And there's workouts that are there for you. Just like Tom Brady, he had different workouts over the course of his career that he was doing based on the season he was in. And that will always be dynamic and different because our bodies are always shifting and changing. So for me, I always recommend, and I'm not a medical, I don't work in any medical field. I don't have any credentials to wave at you, but I recommend getting in tune with what your specific body needs because your body is not whoever's body on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. It's your body. You need to learn that machine and how to tune it and get your manual and put it together and understand it's going to change over time. And a lot of it
Mhm.
to me comes down to how you are providing the right nutrients for your specific body. And as those go, your body will start to want to do things that, support it. So that's what I would,
Absolutely.
but we're also to your point though, Philip, we're not getting in car accidents every 2 or 3 plays like the NFL bodies are. So, you know, it's even better when we're doing those things because we don't have as much of the recovery and repair that they do.
That's true. That's a good way of putting it. Whew. So, what do you feel like midlife forced you to stop ignoring? And what changed once you paid more attention to it?
A few different things forced me to stop ignoring. Where I sit on that dash is one, and my health is two. Um, I looked at what I want to do, where I'm trying to go. My goal is to be a great grandfather. And if my goal is to be a great grandfather, I don't mean I'm not saying um, an awesome grandfather. I'm saying a great grandfather,
Mhm.
as in my children have grandkids and I'm there seeing their grandkids, right? So for me, I looked at, okay, so where are you on your time clock for what you're trying to do in this life? You're now 40. Are you going the steps you need to go down to get there? And so I wrote a contract with myself just before my 40th birthday about how the rest of my life is going to move forward. What do
Mm.
I need to do? How do I need to show up in a relationship? What are some things that I need to make happen? So one of those things was choosing faith over fear. There's so much of my earlier life where I was doing things based on fear as a buffer or as a guide. And I said, why? How much more of a life would I be living if I chose to step forward in faith, believing that what is out there for me will find me instead of fearing that something else is going to find me and do something horrible to me? Some
Mhm.
scenario, some dynamic, whatever the case might be. So I said, just take a step forward, just take another step forward and just keep going and walk towards what you're here to do. Stop putting it on the shelf and get your health in check so you can live out the life that you want to live. So that's what that's something that I started to keep better track of.
Gotcha. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. And already in our conversation, WB, I feel like you've touched on a number of different things could be really helpful for people as you look about life after 40, where, whether it's changing your diet to have more anti-inflammatory elements to it, not caring so much about what other people think to the point where it changes how you live your own life and enjoy it. Um, and even talking about some of the things you talked about as far as the right type of recovery and, things that you pay more attention to. I'm curious, with those changes made, what do you feel like it would have cost you if you had kept going the same way you had been before you had made all these different changes so early?
I think looking at the trajectory, right? There's two types of people. I was listening to this comedian the other day, and he said his grandmother told him, In life, you only have two things to worry about: if you're sick or if you're healthy. And if you're healthy, you don't have anything to worry about. But if you're sick, you got two things to worry about. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because it ends up being, are you going to heaven or hell? And that's a whole nother story. But to me, when you think about all of that, the trajectory of where I was going, I said, you're going to live a life that you are not fulfilled by, and you're going to have been living it for other people who it didn't matter for. And you'll probably be miserable because your health is not what it should be. So all those things said, yo, you need to make some changes if you want something to change. So I did.
Yep, that's true. And so with those changes, WB, what do you feel like are some of the beliefs, some of your habits or rhythms that are now non-negotiable for you at this stage of life?
Yes. So one of the things that I have written up is I love, respect, and appreciate myself. And so what's non-negotiable is I don't let people in my circle of energy that don't have that way of showing up for me. So if you're not willing to be there in that space and meet me in that space, I have to push you out of that circle because I don't have room for that. What else is non-negotiable? Faith over fear is non-negotiable. I also am gravitating towards doing what I like. And I heard people say this and it just really irritated me. And I was like, how do you say that? Like, how on earth do you say that? And what they said was, I do what I want to do. I live and choose what I want to do. And I was like, but, I'm in my mind, I'm in my like, but that's privilege speaking, no, it's not. It's perspective. We all have a choice.
Mhm,
There's always a higher choice. And
mhm.
yes, you have some things that you have to do. You have some responsibilities that you have in front of you, but you also always have a choice. And I find the more you choose and the more I choose to do what it is that I want to do, the more at peace with what I'm doing I am. You find yourself less at peace, I feel, when you're constantly doing things you don't want to do in order to support things that you're committed to or feel like you have to take care of. And when there's a bigger conflict between those two, there's more unhappiness.
Mhm.
And when there's more unhappiness, there's more maladaptive approaches to dealing with that conflict. That's where you tune out on relationships. That's where you start doing and abusing substances and other vices and things of that nature to escape because you don't want to confront that challenge. But the reality of it is, there's always a choice. So that's something that is non negotiable. Those are some non negotiables for me.
I can respect that. And so when you think about where you are now and where you're going towards living to be a great grandfather someday, what does thriving look like for you now?
Wow. So thriving to me looks very similar to, making the impact that I believe that I'm here to make on the lives of people. That looks like to me being able to support the family lifestyle I want, whether we're talking relationally or financially. And that means really looking back on this time period where I made that decision, where I put my foot in the ground and seeing that I made it to the mountaintop and I'm not stuck on some ledge like many of us can find ourselves being. Now, for those that are stuck on a ledge, couple things, couple things to keep in mind. When you're on that ledge, nobody's coming for you. But it goes back to what I said. You always have a choice. You stay on that ledge, you can feel hopeless, or you can find a way and you can keep climbing and you can keep going because there are always going to be things that are harder at first. It's always harder at first than it is when you get further down the road. It's just like climbing a mountain. It's always harder when you're climbing up the mountain
Hmm.
and getting to the last stage towards the summit than it is when you're going back down. And I know some people say, well, your legs are jelly after you start. Well, okay, that's tough, but it's not the same as how you feel going up. And so just remembering those pieces, and that to me is what thriving looks like, all of that collectively.
I like that. And so, as we start to land this plane in our conversation here, WB, and I think you might have alluded to this earlier, so feel free to build upon it if you like. Um, if there's someone listening to our conversation right now and he or she is feeling like they're quietly drifting or burning out in midlife, what do you want them to hear from you right now?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, recognize what that can feel like, right? Burnout is a symptom of somebody who's spending hours in frustration, plain and simple. You can work really hard every day. Every day you can work super hard. You can work 20 hours a day if you could do that. And you would not be quote unquote burnt out, in my opinion, unless the majority of that time was spent being frustrated. If you're
Hmm.
doing what you love to do, truly what you love to do, you're going to put your whole heart into it. And as long as that is not spent being frustrated by your inability or challenges or whatever the case might be, you'll be finding at peace. But if it's filled with frustration, it doesn't matter if you're doing it for 5 hours or 2 hours. If you're doing it every day, you're going to burn yourself out. So just remember, you have a choice. Do I continue in this state of frustration? Or do I start to look at what are the pieces that are leading to me having this frustration to begin with? Is it some work I need to do personally with my own inventory to figure out, am I showing up for myself? Because that's the first thing you have to be able to do, especially at this point in life. There's no more time to not show up for yourself.
Hmm.
Too much of your life has gone on for you not to know really what you need, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So it's time to show up for yourself. And I think the more that you can work backwards from showing up for yourself, maintaining those expectations with other people, and continuing to remove frustration from your life that's not necessary, the less burnout you're going to feel. And again, it's not an overnight sweeping, 180. It's pieces, little pieces at a time to get your life where you want it to be. And know that your best is still available to you. And I'd love to talk to people about this. And Philip, I know this is kind of off script a little bit, but not really, because it goes in with the point. Some people feel like, you know, I was supposed to do this by now. So here's my thing. There's a passage in the Bible, and it says something, and I'm paraphrasing. So if anybody's super biblical, I apologize. I don't have it right in front of me. But the main point of it was the gifts and calling that God has put in a person's life are irrevocable. So, translation, what that means to me is if there's something you were supposed to do and capable of doing, if you didn't do it yet, it's still there for you. Now, if you thought you were going to be an Olympian, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Maybe there's something out there for you, but maybe it's a different version of what that is. And really thinking through what those gifts and callings are, because it's going to, maybe how it comes together looks a little different at this stage, but it doesn't mean it's gone. It doesn't mean you missed it. And one of my favorite things that I like to do, I was a television producer earlier in my career. And my favorite thing to report on out of anything else, I met Barack Obama, Joe Biden, interviewed them, interviewed Olympians. All of that was cool. But the most awesome thing that I ever did was I did a television show about ordinary people in a small town, 10,000 people in Iowa. Does anybody on the show know where Iowa is? Um, 10,000 people in Iowa who were doing extraordinary things. And I started thinking, I was like, wow, what would you do if you just were doing what you wanted to do? And one of the stories was, and this is important for this audience, one of the stories was about a woman who was married. She got divorced. She was 40 years old. She didn't have a college degree. She had, children, the whole 9 yards of major life transitions and challenges. 40 years old, no college degree. She said, I want to be an educator. So she got her BA. She might have got an associate's first. I don't remember all the details, but she got that. She went and got her master's. She went and got her doctorate. By the time we met, she was now the interim president of a college. All this transpired from 40 onward. There's people that don't make that leap and they've been working from their 20s onward. Okay? So to me, if it's meant for you, please let go of the belief that if it's supposed to happen, it would have happened by now. If you decide to step forward today, who knows what that will look like for you, is my point.
Well said. I think that what you said makes a lot of sense because a lot of people, they get caught up in that. It's just like, why it hasn't happened now? Is it ever going to happen? And the thought is, especially after a major life change, like you shared before in that story, it's just, it puts people in shock. It puts people in a sense of analysis paralysis. It's just like, where do we go from here? And you're saying, like, I get it. You may be in a situation that stinks right now and could be hurtful. And there's still time for you to be who you always wanted to be and to borrow any other word I could say, like manifest the gifts that you have that may still be just latent inside you and haven't come out yet. And you still have time just simply by the fact that you still got breath. Like you said before, it's like if you're healthy, regardless of what's happening outside of that, we got something to work with. Because if you aren't healthy, then we got a different question to deal with.
Yeah, I'll add this in. Um, so I think another thing that's important for people to think about, and the question, I'll you know, I'll tie this in within a second. I just wrote a note on it. So this right here is a piece of paper, which is a military record of the furthest back ancestor I can find. He was a soldier in the U.S. Colored Infantry. Long story short, he handed in his shackles from slavery and went and joined the Union Army in an all black division. Now, what was interesting about this all black division is they got put into hot combat. What was also interesting about this division is they were actually there when Robert E. Lee signed the paperwork to basically surrender to the Union. What's not often told about these units, though, is that they were in a win or be killed scenario. Because if they didn't win the battle, they didn't take prisoners of these all black units. They killed all of them. And so that is the earliest ancestor I can find any record of. And what's interesting about his story, handing in those shackles, getting out of slavery, joining this unit, he actually was injured pretty badly. He was sick. He was in the hospital for months. And being in the hospital, being a black person in the hospital at that point in time, it's not a good scenario. We're talking 1800s medical care. Body parts stacked up in front of the building, disease running rampant, right? And he
Mhm.
survived that. Well, it's pretty important that he survived that because if he didn't survive that, I wouldn't be here because he didn't have any kids yet.
Mm.
And I think what a lot of people lose sight of is one very important fact. Somewhere along the line, someone chose to survive when they had other choices. And that's the reason you're here, number one. And number two, the odds of you being here in your current form, it's a better chance of people winning Powerball multiple times in a row than you existing in your current form. So the question I have is really not if it hasn't happened by now, then why would it? The question I leave people to think about is if not you, then who? Because you're here for a reason. So are you going to stand in your own way or are you going to find a way?
That's powerful. Wow. WB, this has been a great, very much refreshing and empowering conversation we've had thus far. And so I can definitely speak for our audience and share my appreciation for you being here. And for people that are listening that have resonated with you, your stories, your way of looking at life, and want to follow you and follow your work, where's the best place for them to connect with you after this?
Yeah, the best place to connect is on Instagram. I have an author page for my upcoming book, and I do have a few of those just to show. These are children's books, but they carry an adult level, life changing message. And that message is I accept me. Because in this journey that you have on this planet, whether you're 40 or four, or we don't give I don't have another four. So if you're 40 or four, all the way down, all the way in between. You need to accept yourself. And if you are interested in connecting with me further, WB Dale on Instagram is the way to do so. I encourage you along the way. I'm here to be um, someone that's cheering you on. So I do appreciate your time on the show today, Philip, and thanks again.
I appreciate you, WB. Listen, like your honesty and your wisdom here is very much appreciated. And for everyone listening, let this be a reminder that midlife is not a problem to fix. You have a choice, as WB talked about, on what you want it to be going forward. And so if something today that WB said resonates with you, reflect on that. You don't have to rush into action today on it, but notice what it's clarifying for you. What is it inviting you to pay more attention to? Because that's where real change begins, not with urgency, but with awareness. And so, with that being said, as we conclude this episode, um, thanks so much, first of all, with WB for being a part of this with us and having this conversation. To learn more about Life After 40, head on over to our website at lifeafter40.com. You're also welcome to connect with me at philipblackett.com. And just as a final friendly reminder, you have a choice. What do you want your midlife to be going forward? Because I do believe that midlife is worth living and worth living well. Thanks so much for everyone spending time with us here, watching and listening. Thank you, WB, once again for being a part of our conversation here. This has been Life After 40 Conversations with Philip Blackett. Thanks so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you in the next conversation. Take care.
Thanks.